Welcome to the Nordic Mythology podcast. I'm Daniel Farrand of the company Horns of Odin. As always, before we jump into the show, I do have to plug our Patreon. I know everybody's probably sick of hearing it at this point, but it is the lifeline to the show. It's how we keep going. So if you want to get access to over 250 episodes, it's the only way to do it is through our Patreon. You get the entire back catalogue. It starts from £3 a month. So that's less than 10p a day. You have some amazing guests on there. Not only some huge actors like Alexander Ludwig, Alexander Dremen. We also have top scholars like Leche Gadea, just incredible guests across the board, musicians like Hai Long. And it's incredible the people we've had on this podcast, but the only way you get those now is through our Patreon. So go and check that out. If you like erotic amateur smut, you also get our Viking smut episode where me, Mags, and Claire sit down and we'll read through some Viking erotica, give our opinions. They are lighthearted. They're a lot of fun. We really enjoy doing those. So you get those, and you also get the bonus Q&A we do with our guests every week. There is just tons of stuff on there. So if you can, head over to Patreon/Nordic Mythology Podcast. Like I say, it starts from £3 a month. If you can listen to all of that in 1 month, you can just delete it after a month. You can listen to it and get rid of it. If you can get through it all, there's no subscriptions, no tie-ins. And I think that's it, other than a like, share, and a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcast to maybe help somebody else find us. But let's get into today's show. I'm really excited to have this gentleman back with us. But first, I will introduce our lovely in-house archaeologist, the owner of the moniker Poopy Axe, her Viking name kindly given to I can't remember who by, but it's sticking.
Pretty sure it was Phil.
It's sticking. That is Mags Havgar.
Hello, everyone. And I'm also wondering, whatever happened to Tapestry Temptress? Didn't we agree that like way back when? I was going through like reels the other day and I was like, Tapestry Temptress, that was nice. And now I'm stuck with Poopy Axe, although it is funny, but you know, it's not quite as...
It's more catchy. I think it's catchier.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you know what? I'll just whatever. I'll just give up. Yep.
All right, and then our guest today is Hamish Lamley of Pictavia Leather, who is an expert in Pictish history and archaeology, a reconstruction specialist in high tanning and leather work, leather boat builder, and historical consultant for film and TV. He also brings his passion for Pictish culture to his tattoo career. Hamish, thank you for joining us once more. I can't remember the last time. It was a few years ago now.
I was just thinking that. I was sitting in my workshop, a couple of years ago now. So, not much has changed about the Picts since then.
What do you mean? There's been no technological advancements since in the archaeological records since last week.
A couple of new finds, but the culture remains the same, I hope. So,
well, hopefully. I would love to see the reaction of our American listeners when they have your lovely accent come through their headphones, because historically I've always seen Americans struggle with the Scottish accent.
Well, I don't think mine's particularly strong. I'm a bit husky at the moment because I've been a bit under the weather since running my my Pictish camp thing. So do excuse me with the bad voice, but hopefully as long as it sounds Scottish, it's all right.
Yeah, you do. You've not lost it. So, we're going to talk the Picts and then also your tattooing career. That I don't think you were doing tattooing last time we spoke.
No, it was kind of early days back then, yeah.
Or maybe not officially.
Not officially, yeah.
Important distinction.
Yeah. I was trying to see if I could find when you were last on, but no, I've not done it. I'm going to stop looking at that. I'm distracting myself.
Dan in real time just going,
Yeah, exactly. But let's have an overview of the Picts, because like I say, it's been a good while since you've been on, but also there'll be a bunch of people who this is their first ever introduction to the Picts. Might be the first time they've ever even heard of the Picts and this lovely group of people?
Sure. So bear with me, because it's quite an expansive way to talk about a culture. Because the Picts are known as one of the original cultures of Scotland. Before the Scots, they are two distinct cultures that merged into one, and the Picts are often defined about who they are in opposition to. So the Picts are always spoken in regard to the Picts and the Romans, the Picts and the Vikings, the Picts and the Saxons. These are all across different time periods, quite large time periods. So to just kind of bridge the gap, the Picts are, is all the cultures you can get in Scotland. And they first get written about by the Romans. So Romans are coming in sort of around the turn of the millennium, mentioning these northern tribes. There's all these Iron Age Celtic tribes in the north of Scotland that they dub the Picti, which potentially means the painted people. These are just loose scattered tribes that through Roman opposition slowly amalgamated, either banding together to fight the Romans or just conquering the weaker tribes as the strong ones prevailed. These came together finally into sort of some major tribes, names like the Caledonii, where Caledonia comes from, and the Maitai. And for several centuries, these people fought the Romans and amalgamated into one tribe that took the name Picti, it seems like. So you had kind of the Picts in the east, Scots in the west, and then Hiberni over in Ireland. And then around the turn of the 5th century, the Romans withdrew from Britain, needing troops for elsewhere, and they pulled a lot of them straight out of the north of Britain. And in this power vacuum grew the Pictish culture. And this happened across the UK with a lot of the cultures at the time. The oppressive boot is removed from everyone's neck, so all the cultures flourish. And in the north, you've got this Pictish culture that was very, very unique at the time. It's got this lovely insular Celtic artwork, and they've got some quite unique things about them. They Christianized last out of all the cultures in the British Isles, and they're
so there's so many people just cheering to that.
yeah.
Because there is that we've spoken on here, rightly or wrongly, there's that huge, particularly it feels like it's becoming more common at the minute, this real negative look on Christianity by anybody who's within the pagan sphere, that it's like that it was some really horrible thing. And I have my own opinions. I don't really think it was necessarily like that. But it's that thing, isn't it, of just as soon as you hear of them being the last ones, it's like the Viking bros you find online that are like, yeah, we went kicking and screaming. No, none of them changed, like converted willingly. They had to all be forced.
Yeah, I definitely want to dive into Christianization because I find it fascinating with Pictish culture. And for me, it comes down to an economical standpoint and why wouldn't you convert, really? In terms of the culture and the time period, it makes so much sense. It's too easy to look at it with 2020 hindsight. So sort of why they Christianized is really interesting. And another really unique thing about them at the time is the kingship didn't seem to pass from father to son. It went through the female line, so they're quite a linear culture. Yeah, so
look at Mags's ears pick up there.
Yeah.
So you just sat up in your chair a little bit more upright. You leaned forward.
Okay, like no one's gonna believe me, but that genuinely was a coincidence. But at the same time, that is fun because it isn't. Dan, shut up. It isn't often that I hear that type of what's it called? Kind of historical data or information is actually preserved.
Yeah,
like it could have been the case for a lot of the literacy cultures in all of Europe, but like we don't know. We just kind of assume that patriarchy has always been a thing. I feel in research, but so that's really cool to hear from you.
Yeah,
Hamish, that you're like, no, it's matrilineal.
We don't know if it was like always the norm or if it was a bit of fire, but mostly what we know of the Pictish kings is this list of king names, and it seems none of the Pictish kings had Pictish fathers. So it seems like it didn't seem to travel this way. It seems there's records of maybe sending Pictish queens south to Northumbria to sort of get some Pictish blood from the kings there. And in regards to like having a kingdom that's formed from separate tribes, and even though when it became one culture, you often had a major kingship and several sub kingdoms. It makes sense when you've got a throne sitting empty, rather than having one suitor. You would have several suitors from all the different cousins, and you could actually choose the strongest person for the thrones. And then these are all kind of intermarried and interwoven into quite a strong society with family at the core.
Yeah.
So that really comes into play later when I'll talk about the kind of Scots and Picts together. But they were certainly a really interesting culture, and through this sort of several centuries, it really formed. When you've got relative peacetime and then relative struggles, I think a culture's art flourishes. So we see like beautiful jewelry and leatherwork and clothing and all sorts really flourishing. And there's still a lot of opposition from the Saxons in the south that are doing the same with their culture. And then we have sort of Viking invasion into Britain. And that's where we start to see the Scots and the Picts coming together in opposition to these Viking raids. It's a really, really cool thing that it's now looking possible with latest research that the Book of Kells was absolutely created in Pictland, possibly at the Portmahomic Monastery. There's been
nice
analysis done on the way the vellum was created and possibly being created in that area with the seaweed that's there. And there's always been kind of links there before, which is just fascinating that it's gone from Portmahomic, moved south to Dunkeld with the Abbey, and then with Viking attacks moved to Iona, and then finally moved over to Kells. So we're already seeing some like really fascinating links there with such a a piece of art that everybody knows.
Yeah.
For the listeners, and absolutely definitely not for me. What is
for a friend?
just what is the Book of Kells? Because I've heard it a lot, and obviously I've researched it and looked into it, but maybe not everyone has.
The Book of Kells is an incredible illuminated manuscript, Christian manuscript, painted with fantastic colours with this gospel in it. It's one of the greatest treasures of like the Western Celtic world. And you can see it in Dublin. Absolutely incredible. And it's always been held as like a national treasure of Ireland, but more and more links are seeing it actually being created in Pictland by Pictish monks. I always like that.
Think you can get it back?
Yeah, we'll see about that. We just got the Stone of Destiny back, so Mon Kells.
Repatriate our heritage.
But yeah, it's really, really interesting to see these links. And this is why Pictish culture, it's always formed through opposition. First the Romans, then Saxons, and then they're kind of banding together through opposition of the Nordic people coming in. This led the Scots and the Picts, who were often at war with each other, to come together and fight the Vikings. Sadly, Vikings were victorious in a battle where the Scottish king died, British king died. So when this happened, there was suddenly two thrones sitting empty, and this is where the Scots elected a very famous man, Kenneth MacAlpin, to the throne, and he also had a Pictish mother, and so the Picts also accepted them as their king. And so this is the first instance we see of the Scottish kingdom and the Pictish kingdom amalgamating into one, and purely because Kenneth MacAlpin came from a Gaelic culture, as opposed to a Brythonic kind of culture. The Picts spoke P-Celtic, more like Welsh. The Scots spoke Gaelic. And because now the man at the top and all his royal court were Gaelic speakers, the language started to change, and Gaelic sort of trickled down from the top. And that kind of Scottish culture kind of took over. And over the next century, basically the Picts started speaking Gaelic and kind of Gallicized, however you say that. I don't know. But
in a geography sense, am I right in thinking that the Picts were more east Scotland?
Yeah, sort of like east, sort of Fife, Angus, Aberdeenshire, up in Caithness, all up in the north. So yeah, definitely east, north, northeast sort of thing. And then
it's just with you saying the language being more Welsh closer to Wales. How? Because they're obviously on.
Well, I mean, it's more kind of like the
side?
branch, like linguistic family, I suppose.
Yeah, it's definitely
Not necessarily the same as, but
no, but I guess the idea would be they travelled up that way at some point, and then would it just become isolated from, or would it be much older than that?
This is
Did that make sense?
To mind your P's and Q's. Which is a saying we've had in English, and no one really knows where it comes from, and it looks like it comes from knowing the difference between P Celtic and Q Celtic. Yeah, minding your.
Wait, are you for real?
Really?
Yeah, for sure. It looks like a lot of cultures, a lot of the Celtic cultures spoke P Celtic. So some of the southwest of Scotland was speaking it, around Dumfries and Galloway, certainly up in the north with the Picts, could have been up on the islands, and then Welsh as well, and most likely through a lot of East England, and where some cultures it seemed to have died out, where Scots might have come in more. So a great way to look at some of that is the poem of the Gododdin, which is a Welsh poem of a kingdom being massacred, and that kingdom is in fact East Lothian in Scotland, where Edinburgh was, which was a not a Pictish kingdom. It was a kingdom just to the south of Pictland, but that is a whole tale that only survives in Welsh. It's all in P Celtic, and it's from the east of Scotland. So you see the links. It's not going to be a direct link. It's just the kind of the root of the language there. And that Gaelic is definitely the Q Celtic, kind of West Scotland and Ireland, very combined.
That's really cool. I'm sorry, I got a little bit hung up on that
Me too.
the saying, because from my non-UK self, minding your P's and your Q's, that is kind of somewhat akin to the saying dotting your I's and crossing your T's, right? Or am I way off?
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the one that I'm familiar with. So like when I've heard like minding your P's and your Q's, I've just been like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because it's like dotting your I's and crossing your T's.
I thought it was for me, it means kind of mind your pleases, say please and thank you. That's what it means. And I guess I've never really thought about it. I'm like, P obviously means please, and Q, thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I love it when we find out that these like just random everyday sayings have like way like older historical roots.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's fascinating when you dive into the language. And what's so sad is the only like real sort of references or remnants we have of the Pictish language is in pretty much two things, and that's the list of king names and in place names in Pictland. That's the only bit where we actually have remnants of P Celtic. And the list of king names is wild. Like some of the names are Talach, Drust, Gartnate, Nechten. They're names that are so unrecognizable to what we have today.
And I assume then with those being the only remnants that we have, like I suppose you could kind of conjure a sort of a pronunciation guide, but like we don't necessarily then know exactly how things would be pronounced either then, or
it's tough because I don't speak any Gaelic, unfortunately. I'm from the northeast where we speak Nordic, which is very, very different. It's more akin to Norwegian. So yeah, not being a Gaelic speaker and not being a Welsh speaker, it's very difficult. I actually rely on my colleague Sean as a Welsh speaker. I often ask him how to pronounce stuff. He's a better tongue for it, also speaking Old Welsh. I know he can recite the Gododdin in Old Welsh, so he's closest, I would say, to hearing anything akin to the Pictish language.
So fascinating.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah. So this is where we have sort of kind of almost like 2 to 3 timelines of Pictish culture, just to kind of cement people in that sort of. You've got early Iron Age Celtic Pictish tribes sort of dealing with Roman opposition. You've got this little sweet spot in the centre that I really love, sort of 5th to 9th century of this Pictish culture forming, Christianizing, really throwing up its own boundaries and like showing how much of a strong kingdom it is. And then you have this tail end of sort of Picts and Scots amalgamating, and then that sort of evolves into the kingdom of the Scots. It comes, from the land of the Picts to the land of the Scots, and then from then on is Scotland. So we've got this like real sweet spot of Pictish history that we can kind of delve.
So you have like a 400-year period type.
Yeah.
So you said 5th to 9th?
Yeah.
And then the amalgamation happens kind of after. Does it happen like over multiple centuries, or is it kind of like a quick successive thing? Do you know? Like, I don't know if we know this, but
it's a little slow. So it started with Kenneth MacAlpin. So it's, starts sort of 9th century going into 10th. And I think it didn't really cement until sort of his grandchildren, because I think with his kind of takeover, a lot of the matrilinear ways of doing things sort of fell by the wayside. And I think the kingship started to trickle down more in a patriarchal sense that we know.
Sure.
So I think that kind of strengthened it as a Gallic kingdom. And yeah, it would have taken several centuries for that to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, we speak English today now. We don't speak Gaelic anymore in Scotland. So it happens.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, yeah. Do you have any questions on sort of initial outlook of Pictish culture?
I'm curious as to, obviously this is a Viking Age based podcast, because whenever we hear of the Viking Age in the UK or the British Isles, it's very predominantly based in England, and then obviously a little bit in Ireland. And yeah, I don't, other than I guess the islands off the north of, like the Orkneys, they get mentioned quite a bit. But Scotland itself doesn't really get too much. And then when you mentioned that they kind of came together to fight against the Viking forces, but lost as well, lost some battles. How far did that go up? Or was it a case of that they held them pretty much out and that's why we don't hear much? Or is it just a case of the English kind of get the
taking center stage?
Yeah, something like that.
I think you've got two reasons why there's less mentions. One is by this time you had a very, very strong warlike Pictish kingdom that's constantly fighting off Scots, constantly fighting with the Orcades in Shetland and Ireland, and Saxons coming from the south. So you've got pretty strong borders already. One thing that certainly Pictland had that you don't have in the south, sort of south of the wall, as I'll say, is huge promontory forts all up the coast. Huge hill forts such as Burghead, which is the most famous. So these would have really deterred shipping raids. What you've also got is just landscape. It's the reason why the Romans struggled so much in Scotland. It's the reason why anyone has struggled trying to conquer the land. One, it's very, very difficult. And two, why would you bother? There's not really any resources that are worth throwing away so many men in Scotland. There's not much but, sheep and hill farmers, the odd bit of silver. There's not great farmland that's there for the taking, not at that time period. There's no riches to be had, so I just don't think it's that worth it. And anything that is worth it is just going to be a real slog to get through the promontory forts, to get up the rivers and get to the landscapes where there is riches. Probably churches is what would have been housing the most.
Okay, without this sounding in any way disrespectful, because it's not meant to.
Wow! What a great way to start the question, Dan.
No. Wait.
All right, go ahead, please.
Why do you think the people, I guess, the Picts and the Scots, stayed there for so long if it was very uninhabited? Like you said, there's not much there. It's pretty difficult to farm there. Why not push south into England? Obviously, they had pretty strong armies, and like you said, used to fighting on a warrior culture. Why not kind of head south and into Saxon land rather than staying kind of up in the Scottish area?
Have you ever been to Scotland? It's beautiful.
It is. It is. But it's absolutely. That's what I mean. Without sounding, because I don't want to sound disrespectful, because it's such a beautiful country. But obviously, we're very privileged where we can drive up and stay and look at all the beautiful landscape, but we don't have to think about farming it and feeding our families all the time. We can just kind of go and stay in a hotel. But whereas if you're having to rely on the land, but there is, really good land south, why not kind of like migrate down?
Well, just strong kingdoms to the south as well. I think that's always been the case. I think there's a part of the country that has never changed, in the sense that the Scottish borders have always been this no man's land of anyone living north trying to push south and everyone south trying to push north, and it's that hot pot meeting ground where no one ever really gains ground for very long. There is mentions in mid 4th century of Scots and Picts and Irish assaulting London in coracles. There's certainly plenty of mentions of southern raids, but I guess in the Iron Age period, they were cementing their kind of tribal landscapes. And then what we see in sort of Roman times is this like ownership of the land, of the culture, of the symbols. So Pictish stone carvings are one thing that drew draws many people in, and we're very used to looking at the stone carvings in the kind of early medieval Viking Age sense. They're very, very recognizable, but the early Pictish stones are looking like they were much earlier than we believed, due to some amazing work by Gordon Noble. So what we initially thought the earliest Pictish stones were sort of 5th century, and it looks like they're coming out more 3rd, 4th century now. So I think what's potentially happening is you've got these people that are surviving, thriving, whatever, in this harsh landscape, but they're making it work. And then Romans start marching in, bringing things like stone carving and their, pictorial languages, and you suddenly have this culture going, oh, well, we better get our culture up. We better raise some stones of our own and get carving and show our symbols. And I think that just starts cementing that ownership and pride that we still have today, of people saying, this is a rough land, but it's our land. And it's always in opposition, it seems. And I think once you've claimed that landscape and then you grow up and it's surrounded by these stones, it's immovable in yourself. So yeah, certainly would have been people pushing out. There was lots of times where the Picts were conquering a lot of the islands or heading over to fight in Ireland and south. But time and time again, I think the kingdom's always going to be strengthened where it is. And every other culture at the time period is doing the same. I think that's it. I think when, the friction is where the kind of borders are met, and you can only push so far. So it's easy to stay in Scotland and kind of be happy and let other people moan when they come here.
Yeah, right. Because that's something I was thinking about when you asked your question, Dan, is that I think that's something that many of us still to this day absolutely have, but we might not talk about it in the same way. But that is the connection to land. I am from here. My family is from here. This is our, not necessarily in a proprietary sense simply, but also in a, we know how this landscape works. We know how to deal with the different seasons or the unpredictability of this area, and not necessarily giving all of that up just to potentially find something better somewhere else. There's this I remember being introduced to really a different version of this concept when I did an internship in Australia, and we had a lot of really good talks with elders from the different Indigenous communities that we did community work for, and they talked about connection to country and just how it's almost this spiritual thing too that I wasn't used to thinking about. But then I was like, that does track. So there's no necessarily perhaps physical way we can trace this archaeologically, but it would make sense for me too that if you have this sort of connection to the country, you wouldn't necessarily abandon it completely, potentially for, some acres of better farmland south. But I might be off base here. I don't know. I don't know if you have any takes on this, Hamish.
Yeah, when you fought so bitterly for something, you protect it, and it's a form of defense as well. Only Scots and Picts can survive here, so,
right?
Yeah, live on nothing but neeps. So
yeah.
But also, I guess, if you're raised there, and it's easy looking back today. I mean, well, you could have just gone and, well, not you could have just, but there is this other world below, or this other farmland. But at the time, you just know what you know, and that's the land that you're on. And we don't have this whole global kind of network that we have today.
You can't go on Google Maps and be like, yeah, I can see that wheat would be much better like planted over there.
They didn't until Christianization. Then they kind of did. That's one of the points. You are this small insular culture that you don't really know that much better. And then once you start Christianize, you can start sending people to Rome for training and stuff. And what would that really look like? But coming from, the northeast of Scotland, being a wee Chichester craftsman, and then the church send you to Rome to go and learn stone carving or something. That would have been pretty wild, I reckon.
I mean, it's hard to even begin to imagine that, because it's like it necessitates a worldview that's so different from ours, also just because like from the get-go we have the opportunity to be exposed by a different type of variety than they ever would back then. So like, what would it be to like, walk somewhere and then maybe take a horse and cart and like sail somewhere and then like travel and the amount of time it will likely take, and then just climate changing. Like, how would you even experience climate change if you didn't know what, like, oh, it's going to be hotter down here, if you weren't prepared for that? Like, how would that feel just physically, and different smells and colors and languages? Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, think of the poor Romans that were sent to man Hadrian's Wall.
Well, it's
got to have been a harsh assignment.
There's the letters in there in the British Museum of the soldiers been like, it's shit up in here. Send like more warm clothes.
They're asking for socks.
Yeah, it's not good. But that's a great point, because if you imagine being from East Scotland, where it's pretty rainy and tough climate, and then you don't have the worldview and the knowledge of the globe that we have now, and the structure of countries. And yeah, there will be some, maybe you would have seen a map, maybe probably not, but maybe some early maps exist. And then you've got to walk and ride all the way down to Rome. It's not like you jump on a plane today and we understand what happens. It's like, oh, I'm going to be on a plane for 4 hours. I'm going to get off in Rome, and you kind of understand it all. The journey must be unbelievably taxing, but also it is like going into a different world. It's almost like not being.
But imagine the adrenaline kick you would get, because everything would be different and new.
I would say the opposite, actually. I think it's a culture shock to step on a plane speaking English and step off one with another language. I think that the long journey, you see the landscape change, you hear the languages come, and different languages intermingling. I feel like it would be a slower acceptance to your new location, in a sense. You'd really feel that journey, though. You would probably feel a lot more isolated on how far you've come and how far it is to get back. Whereas a 4-hour flight, you think, oh, I've only got to jump on a flight and I'm back home.
Yeah, you would be. Where would you begin? If they left you in Rome, your guys just left you and were like, all right, or died. Like, how the fuck do you get back to Scotland? Like,
on fact.
And how do you even navigate getting around if you don't read at all or speak the same language? Or like, how do you get from place to place just within like a city like Rome, which even at that time was freaking huge compared to anything here in Scandinavia, or I would assume in Scotland? I'm sorry if my assumption is wrong there, Hamish, but I assume that like Rome was on a different scale than we were used to up here in the north.
Oh no, loads of Colosseums here. Loads.
Oh yeah, right? Oh yeah, I forgot about like the great amphitheater of Edinburgh. My bad.
But yeah, it would have been quite wild for sure. It's the thing with the Picts. It's a very small insular culture that's would have had some connections with some parts on continental Europe. So yeah, like the Breton parts of France, small parts of Germany. There may be some similarities. There's mentions of the Romans for some of their scouts for the troops they sent into Scotland. They used auxiliaries from some of the tribes in southern France because they would have been more acclimatized to it and the language would have been more similar. So we're probably talking more sort of like Breton, Gaulish scouts being threaded into Scottish landscape. And apparently most of them just went rogue because they had more in common.
They're like, fuck this.
The landscape they were scouting, and then helped set ambushes for the Romans.
Nice.
Yeah, I very much like to think that's true.
Do we know anything about the religion of the Picts? Obviously, you said that there was the Christianization. So, is it like a pagan culture? But can we get any information from the artwork? Obviously, we can take a lot from Viking art, I guess. But then you've got that written text to kind of explain what's what, whereas I guess we don't have that with the Picts. Well, to give a best guess, Mags,
sure.
not 100%, but if there's a wolf with someone's hand in it, they kind of go, okay, probably Tyr and Fenrir.
Okay, I'll let you get. For reference, Hamish, I do Viking Age art interpretation, so that's why I'm a bit like, I don't know, Dan, but
it's the real travesty of Pictish culture is that we know nothing about the religion before Christianity.
Oh really? Nothing. Like
like a pagan culture, and like most things with Christianity, the Christians amalgamated the pagan symbols into the Christian ones. So really, all we have is the stone carvings where we have pre-Christian ones that are very recognizable, with symbols that are completely unique in the world. We've lost the original meaning, but we can still build some picture of some of the images. And then suddenly we see Christian crosses, stones with the same images in. So they've just amalgamated them in, but there's no meaning to kind of be gleaned there, and nothing definitive and nothing we can really put bias behind. At any lecture on the Picts, you'll always have 5 guys in the crowd that can tell you exactly what they all mean. But
well, sure, yeah. But obviously,
it's not enough to go on. There's not much written down. I think mythology-wise, the closest we would have is Ireland. So looking at a lot of Irish mythology is interesting because, like Cuchulainn in Irish mythology was trained in Scotland on I think it was Skye. The Skye. So parts of Scotland are mentioned in Irish mythology, but it's quite threadbare. And sadly, there's just not much to go on. My studies tend to not veer into the religious anyway. So there's no doubt people who are can pick up a few more threads on that, but I've never really come across much myself.
For all the criticisms of Snorri, it makes you kind of grateful for somebody like him that wrote so much down about the Viking Age. Because if you had that similar sort of figure for the Picts, you could glean so much from it and try and work with it with the artwork.
Yeah, it's really sad that there's just no writings. I mean, the closest would be the Pictish king names and any Ogham inscriptions that are on stones. Ogham's the kind of Celtic alphabet that comes from Ireland and spread into Scotland and Wales, and it's kind of like a long stem line with kind of dashes all along it. Yeah, we can glean the odd thing from the odd inscription, but nothing that kind of talks about the religion and things, sadly. It would have been fascinating to know what the kind of pre-Christian beliefs would have been, because I think they, quite similar to sort of Irish, but I think they would have still been very unique in their own way, because the symbols are so unique and they're not in Ireland, they're not anywhere else. They are only in the northeast of Scotland.
That is so fascinating, just because like when you explain it, it makes total sense. I just haven't realized the lack of written sources to the extent, especially when you're talking about like the linguistic change as well, where just after the amalgamations with the Scots and everything, that just there was a somewhat, I assume, perhaps semi-natural change of language. Then obviously, stuff gets lost if no one continues to speak the language, and if that's before literacy becomes like a culture thing. And since that's something I think is so interesting, that we're such a literacy biased culture now, that it's almost like it's hard for us to figure out how to quote unquote read things that aren't writing, or like figure out systems of understanding that aren't letter based.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's what's really sad is you've got this this kind of P-Celtic culture mixing into Q-Celtic. So some things are lost then, but there's still enough similarities, which is why a lot of the place names remain. The real trouble was Latin coming in, because you now have a culture that's Christianized, and people that speak these Celtic languages, any writing they were doing probably was in Ogham. So it's kind of like a Celtic rune system. It's very basic. But it only has a certain amount of sounds to it. So as soon as you start bringing Latin in, you just don't have the way to make the sounds. Mostly the clergy that were writing things down. That's where a lot of the language and terminology on things changed, because they were just Latinizing everything then. So that's where I think Ogham kind of disappeared. We lost that. We lost a lot of the P-Celtic and even Gaelic culture. Some of that would have been lost as well, just through Latinization as well.
Are there any inscriptions on the picture stones that look like any type of writing, or that could be, there could be an early form of like Ogham or akin to like a rune system?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Ireland, there's hundreds of inscriptions of Ogham. When it comes to Scotland, there's just under 40. Catherine Forsyth did a fantastic 800-page thesis on it, which is the one I always consult. So about half of them are eligible. Half of them are really not. My favourite stone from my hometown of Inverurie has a beautiful inscription that's really eligible, and it reads Eritadoran, which they believe was the name of the chieftain. It's been said to possibly be St. Ethernin, but it's a pre-Christian pagan stone, and it has this beautiful pairs of symbols on it. So that's quite an obvious one. You usually look for formulas in it. So, like typical Scottish terminology of like a MacDonald is Mac is son of. So a MacDonald is son of Donald. You see this Mac in Ogham inscriptions. It's either MACC or MAQQ. So if you kind of recognize those letters within an inscription, you can tend to figure out that the piece before it is a name and the piece after it would be the father's name. So there's a few where you kind of see that, which is really cool. And then there's just a load that are just gibberish. So we're well versed in abbreviations and things these days. So people could have just been marking down random sounds or letters, because it's a very phonetic language. The same name gets written differently in Ogham. So, but there's definitely some that you can read as names and inscriptions, which is really fascinating.
Do any of them cross over to the Pictish stones? Do you get any?
Yeah. So these
written text on? Are they on this? Okay.
Stones. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. There's I think about 35 that are on Pictish stones.
Okay.
So yeah, you can kind of see across that. There's about half of them being quite eligible. So people are using it. They are writing in this language. They are figuring it out phonetically as well, which is quite fun. It's just difficult because it's not like runes in Scandinavia where there's so much evidence of it. There's often too much evidence, but you can still piece together enough when you really lay it out. With Ogham, there's just a whole lot less to go by, but at least there's something.
It's interesting how often, or it seems to be anyway, that people just wrote their names on stuff. Like writing systems were just used to write their name. When you look at Mags, you could test for it. Like in Viking Age artifacts, most of them are just this belongs to so and so, or this very literal. It's like it's the name on so and so made this, or like this is a comb. Very kind of like literal things. It's fascinating how the writing systems were used to kind of like take ownership of things rather than how we use them today.
Or just, well, here's the thing. Okay, I'm gonna draw a comparison and parallel that might not be applicable at all, but let's have fun with it and see where it goes. But I also wonder, one thing is taking ownership, another thing is just the sort of desire to put your mark on something, to just for like, oh, I'm now able to use this tool, and I want to make sure that this, like me, that traces of me still exists. And the comparison that I thought of was a couple months ago, my sister and I were helping our dad go through their storage unit, which has been unopened for close to 19 years, since my parents have lived outside of Norway since 2006 and just recently moved back home. And we were going through all of this stuff, and almost every piece of furniture that we found that would have been like at eye height or below a 6-year-old had some sort of a marker or a pen with the name Anna. And that's my sister's name. So as soon as she learned her letters, or at least the A and the N, she was just a cute little menace, where she would just run around the house, and any pen she could grab, she would like just tag her name into it. And she talked about it now, like she's turning 30 next year. She was like, I don't remember why I did that, but I remember it being a lot of fun. And and again, like a 6-year-old's, kind of cutesy little kind of acts of the home terror, and what would this be, 2002, is not necessarily applicable to the use of runes or ohm and way back when. But I do wonder if it's also just this having fun with being able to put something that is inarguably you on something. I don't know.
I think it can also be a way to identify others. So, small insular culture, insular language, you're marking things. Those that can read it are tribe, those that can't are not. And it identifies who is other to you. So it's kind of I also see it as...
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, there's interesting thing. There's in the entire Pictish time period, there is one mention of a druid, and the only application for the druid was as a translator between a Pictish king and a Scottish king. So even within Scotland, you've got people that can't communicate with each other, and they need a druid.
That's really interesting.
Wow.
So yeah, you really wonder about Owen. With it being phonetic, you can see the same name written twice. And I do a lot of Owen tattoos for people, and really have to try and break it down phonetically and get help with Gaelic or Welsh or Irish, and break it down into the kind of sounds. And I write my name differently in Owen, because the sounds are just different. So even within a kingdom, people are struggling with communication.
But so okay, just I might be misunderstanding, but so do you mean that like what would in Latin letters be interpreted as the same name is written differently in Ogham depending on the pronunciation of that specific person?
Yeah, absolutely. In my name, case in point, sort of a Hamish ends with an sh to denote the sh sound. Whereas in more like Gaelic, you only need an s for that. So when I write my name in Ogham, there's no point putting an h on the end because it's just superfluous.
Yeah. Well, it's like when people, especially in the States, try to pronounce my given name, like the fact that there's a TH is a fucking pain in the ass because it's not a the sound, it's the T sound.
Yeah. I love all this stuff. This stuff just fascinates me. Back to a little point back to like the writing names on things. Do you think it could also be that we live in a very materialistic throwaway culture today? So you don't really write your name on stuff because it kind of gets lost, or you buy a new one. Whereas even I think probably all our parents' generations, things where you got something and it cost a lot of money. It was probably well made. So you kind of not meant more, but you would write your name on it to make sure it stayed, or you kind of identified it. And especially, back 1,000 years ago, 1,200 years ago, a comb or any object would take so much work to make. It's not like you can just go to the shop and buy another one. So he's kind of, maybe you put your name on it just to make sure it does stay with you. Kind of like putting your little name in your jumper at school.
Yeah, I still do that sometimes.
Exactly.
Same. I write my name in all my books. If people want to borrow them, I'm like, it's my book, bitch. Give it back.
But if you had to make this item, whatever it is, whether it's a leather bag that you make, Hamish, the amount of time that you put into it's like, this is different to something that I just bought because it's taken a lot of effort. So I'm going to put my name in it so anybody knows that this is my thing. And also, I guess it's a mark of quality maybe as well, depending on, now that's got me thinking, because maybe the names, it could be a maker's mark, could be I don't know, like an early branding of, there could be a ton of combs out there with Hamish on it because
like an
they're all
comb.
Yeah, they're all made by Hamish, and that if you've got a Hamish comb, it's fucking really good.
Is this just when I took my dreads out?
But it could be, but maybe it's that. Maybe it's like a maker's thing.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Sadly, yeah, that's it. When you're talking about Viking Age, like Ulfport kind of swords, you kind of see.
Yeah,
you see that sadly with the Pictish stuff, because we just don't have copies of stuff. We just don't have several. There's 2 knife handles that I know of that have Ohm on, and the one that I've made a replica of, we can't figure out what the Ohm says. So for my replica, I just carved my name. Exactly what you said. It's my knife. So and it's
that's got to be so frustrating to be able to identify that as Ohm, but not being able to identify what it says.
Yeah, and it's funny because I actually had someone on a course of mine recently come over from Canada and said, I had this like traditional like a little spear throwing thing made, and one of the elders has carved Ohm in it because it's from my culture. And when I looked at it, it's like it's kind of, I can't read it. It doesn't say anything. And I think sometimes you see the same with runes, Ohm and things.
Mm-hmm.
People want it to look that way, but they actually don't know how to write it, so they'll just kind of make it up. And it looks right. It looks nice. It looks pretty at a glance. But if you can read it and you realize there's actually nothing written there, it's quite interesting. So I wonder if that also happened. If people were just feigning literacy by going, "Oh yeah, I can read. Yeah, here we go. No, that means that."
Yeah, maybe, because if the other person doesn't read, you're like, well, I'm so intellectual. I know what it says, and they can never fact check you.
Yeah. So.
Oh wow!
That is actually really interesting. Of it being just like, I like the look of this, so I'm gonna make it kind of look like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then
if you try to read it, it's just like, what?
There's some poor archaeologists just sat there trying to figure that out for a decade. His life work is just like, one day I'm gonna figure out what this says, and really, you're never gonna do it.
Just the best practical joke ever.
It's just like a cat typing on a keyboard type thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, it could be though, because humans are humans, and we say that on here a lot, and I genuinely believe that whatever we do today, people would have done back then. And there are some people today who would absolutely just lie about being able to read and write, because we take it for granted today, because pretty much everyone can do it now. When you spend as much time in Facebook groups as I do, it feels like a lot of people actually can't read and write, but it is a common thing for the most part. We take it for granted. It's not like a really high thing.
But that's also a very, very recent development.
Yeah, but back 1,000 years ago, it would be such an elite thing. Why wouldn't people lie about it? Because it's going to make them look cool.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to look cool.
Everyone wants to look like they can write their name in Ohm. That's natural.
Yeah. I do. Even that, though, we still see it today. How many people do we see particularly in Facebook groups, flexing that they can write runes, flexing that they can just read a runic inscription, or telling people what this says, what that says, and it's like an ego boost. So people do still do it in a fashion.
They do, and so I've done Viking Age sort of leatherworking for years through my leatherwork career. Now I'm not well versed in runes at all, but with the internet these days you can get a general gist, and I'd often do small runic inscriptions in leather, and I'd started just doing like the Elder Futhark stuff because it's the most common, people can see it, and it's so I started doing that, and they go, well, actually no, I want more Viking Age runes, something that's a bit more authentic to what I'm making, and I do the more authentic inscriptions, and I found people didn't like that because they couldn't read. It wasn't an easy one to read. They wanted to come up to the stall and go, I can read what that says, and get a pat on the back, and then go away and never buy it. So
the amount
that was really frustrating, that people just kind of want to be part of the tribe. That's all it is.
I have
you get that with
a paragraph that I have ready to send out to people who order horns and ask for their name carving in runes or something, and I'll use Younger Futhark, and I'll use the best kind of way that I can work it out, and then they'll send me a little fucking email all shitty like, this is wrong, this, and then I have to be like, fuck, right, now I have to sit down and spend 20 minutes of my day explaining to you why it's not wrong, why I used, and then even just try to over-educate and be like, look, it's never going to be 100% perfect because there's all these different variations, like you said, different geographic locations, how people say different things, the different, and it's just like, oh, just stop.
Yep, it's painful. I mean, I do OM tattoos for people, and always have to explain, like, it's interpretation, it's phonetics, so I do my best in how to interpret that. Someone else could write the same thing, just ever so slightly differently, use a different letter for a different sound.
That's kind of the problem I feel with, dead languages and writing systems, is that no matter how good you are at them in the modern day, like you could spend your entire career really getting into all the nitty-gritties of it, but because it is a written language or just a spoken language that is essentially dead and has been dead for more than 1,000 years, you're never going to become fluent because there are always going to be caveats and small changes and stuff that you don't know about because you haven't experienced it. And I think that's okay. But I also think that that's something that when you're not, part of a community or an academic tradition or both, it's like, it's so different from how we're used to approach written stuff today that I kind of also, I'm both frustrated but also kind of sympathetic towards people who just kind of like don't get it, and they don't necessarily don't get it out of bad faith, but it's just so alien to them.
People want to be right all the time, and it's what we come up against with archaeology and history. And I make replicas for museums, and I always say, first off, I'm not right, it's an interpretation. The only person who knows how to make it right is the original craftsman, and they're unavailable.
That's the same thing I do. I'm working on illustrations of like Viking Age tapestries, and like I'm very specific anytime I show anything anywhere that I'm like, this is not the correct one. This is my interpretation. And I don't think I am more or less right than any of the other people who have illustrated this. This is just my take on what I'm seeing.
And we need this mentality, and more so when dealing with Pictish culture, because we don't have the answer.
I could just imagine
other cultures. The symbols is the biggest thing. People all the time say, what does this symbol mean? I can't tell you. We have.
It's like, I don't know, man. I wish I could.
Yeah, I've got some cool theories, but I can't tell you that's what it means. It's got to come down to your own interpretation and how comfortable you are on that fence, really, and being okay to be wrong with it as well.
It is just another form of translation. You're just translating artwork into more artwork rather than it just being linguistically, but it's still open to interpretation by the person recreating it or redrawing it, remaking it. And especially when it comes to runes in particular, language, if they didn't have and same with what you were saying before, a different way of writing the name amongst themselves. You have the same, maybe even written at the same time period, just in different areas, or even in the same village, but just they wrote it differently based on how they said it. If you have that in the time period, how can you ever expect us today to have an exact redrawing of that, or a way to translate that today as in a tattoo or on a piece of artwork. It's impossible because they didn't even know, they didn't have a standardization at the time. So you're not going to have one today, but I guess people just want little boxes to fit everything in because it's easier as well. It's easier to kind of, I want a tattoo in Ogham, or I want a tattoo in runes. It's easier to kind of just go, okay, well, this is what it is, rather than maybe it could be possibly that, but maybe not, and it might be this other thing, and I'm just going to have to pick one. And
it's so difficult, especially with Ogham. I find, like, are we trying to translate something from Latin or into Gaelic or Welsh, and then I need help with the Gaelic and Welsh, and then choosing the letters that fit. And then it also comes down to, especially with Ogham, sometimes aesthetically it just doesn't look nice. You might really want a Gaelic translation, I say, but if you put it into Welsh, it looks aesthetically more
looks better.
So that's part of being human as well, is the beauty and not just being right.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
100%.
Sometimes with names in runes, I'll be like, that just looks shit. Like, I don't like how that looks, and I'm like, I could just do this instead, and it's technically still right, and it's gonna look much more aesthetically pleasing. So I'm gonna do that instead.
Yeah, and we all take these little nudges. I mean, it's as making replicas. It's the same. You're kind of like replicating a shoe, and I'm looking at a little mistake, and I'm like, ooh, I could just fix that and make it look a bit nicer. Or
but then it's technically wrong.
Yeah, that's it. Then it's wrong, but it's all wrong. None of it's right. And so it's by creating anything, we put ourselves into it, don't we? So
I'm just gonna pull up for anybody who's watching what Ogham looks like. Just a quick Google check.
So
Google search. So it's like a series of lines, isn't it? And
they all connect. So you tend to get this single long stem line, and then each letter is a series of a kind of coordination of lines that come.
Could you click on one of them, Dan? Because not all of us have big gas screens like you.
There's actually a stone right in the center there. If you clicked on that one, that was it.
This one?
Yeah, that was quite nice.
Remember what we talked about also? Then right-click, open new tab.
So that one actually shows, instead of a stem line, they would often use the corner of a stone, and then they do.
That's so cool.
Right off the corner.
Yeah. Okay. Can you see that, Max?
Yeah.
Because if I open a new tab, I'll have to close the sharing screen.
Oh,
and
sorry. Yeah,
that's all right.
Yeah. So it's
that's fascinating.
It's very simple once you kind of get well versed in it. Just such a simple way of writing. Just a very same as runes, that it's very easy to mark anything with a sharp tool.
Yeah, because it's just straight lines.
Yeah. So it kind of works. Anything.
What about this one quickly? Are these real?
So
or are these
they are real. So what you've got is the four sort of strands to the left of that. Each of those strands is called an acme. And so in earlier styles, you get the 4 acme because that's all the sounds you need for P and Q. When Latin starts to come in and more Gaelic, you need new sounds. So this 5th acme, the strands on the right, they were then added. And this is what you see in 9th, 10th century Irish manuscripts. You don't really see any of that in Scotland.
Right, okay.
Some of the stuff in the manuscripts is just wild. It just looks made up.
Oh, it's so yeah. I don't want to say fascinating, but it is. I love just stuff that's completely different to what we usually talk about on here, because it is unusual. Yeah, it's unusual. A lot of people will never have kind of seen this before, and this way of kind of writing. I guess it looks somewhat kind of like a bind rune in a sense of that you have like straight kind of like stave to it, and then the lines that kind of go.
I do often have Ogham mistaken as a bind rune.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, technically it is. So, it just looks really nice, and I find it interesting how people are so drawn to bind runes, and especially when I'm tattooing in Scotland and Ireland, and people ask for a bind rune, and I'm like, but you're Irish, don't you want Ogham, and then they're like, "What's Ogham?" And they look at it and they're like, "Nah, I'll go with bind rune." It's very, very interesting, like trying to talk people into what Ogham is and what it means, and yeah, it's just not as well versed as the bind runes, I guess.
Mm-hmm. No, but it's cool though. It is. I'd have an Ogham tattoo.
I mean,
because I think it's really
I've got
neat.
plenty, and I do it a lot, and I always say with my ones, it kind of looks like shit barbed wire.
I can see that. I can see how people if people don't know what it is.
It's just random lines, but it's no different from runes, really.
Is it red in any particular way? Top to bottom to top,
yeah, so
across?
It's red from the bottom to the top. So yeah, you read
started from the bottom. Now we're here.
Yeah, and it's cool because on some stones they get to the top and they've ran out of space, so they just curl it round and keep going.
Nice.
Oh, nice. That's kind of like the rune stones.
Yeah.
You just kind of fit in wherever you need to get it in.
I love these guys. They're really not planning out what they're doing so many times.
No.
They're just rogues with a stone.
I know, and it comes out so beautiful in a lot of cases as well, but they've just crammed these little bits in.
Yeah.
But that's so fun. But like something. No, sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
No, go, Max.
I was just looking up real quick because it's not the same necessarily at all. But what Ogham really kind of sort of reminds me of in the sense where there, excuse me, but like in quotation marks, heavy quotation mark, just like dashes, is this pre-Columbian writing system called Kipu. Which was this knotted, they used cords and knots. And I think it's been pretty well translated to this day, but it's just, I love that the logic behind the writing system is just so different from what we use today. So like just the dashes and the angle of the dashes and everything in Ogham kind of reminds me of how they would weave these cords and like the amount of knots or how they would like appear next to each other depending on the length of the cord and everything. Is what makes the whole thing make sense, essentially.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. It's for this my cuneiform is so fascinating. Just use one simple tool pushed into clay, and it's amazing watching people write in it.
Mm-hmm. We made stuff really difficult for us today.
Before we go off, I have to. I just saw this on my little Google search, and I have to ask if it's true because I can imagine it's a thing that we find very often with the runes. A lot of kind of like misinformation, isn't there, about this stuff? And is it this one? This tree, is this real? This thing, the Ogham Tree Grove?
No, that is a much later thing that was kind of added. Someone who I can't remember the name wrote a lot about Druidism, and this was this modern reimagining of Druidism, and then had assigned all these different trees to the Ogham. There's no ancient record of that. Not that.
I mean, it's a pretty thought, but whether or not it's based in historical accuracy is completely different.
Yeah,
I had to ask.
I mean, people love the Icelandic 16th century stave symbols, and have confused them with Viking, and then come back to it's still historical. It's still very cool.
Sure.
With Ogham, it's still beautiful to have the trees identified with them, but I don't think it goes back as far.
Mm-hmm.
No, see, I like that point of view. That's kind of where you don't necessarily immediately shut someone down. We're like, yeah, it's beautiful and you can still use it, but that doesn't mean that it was necessarily used back then in this way.
Yeah.
Perfect. I want to quickly ask you about archaeology and how much there is, if there is much at all, when it comes to objects that we might have, and then we'll wrap up. And if we could just do like a quick little Q&A for like 20 minutes. Sometimes for as long as you have. Sometimes we do a Q&A and I say quick and they last another hour. Sometimes they're
I guess we should first of all ask Dan, like, how are you feeling, Hamish? Are you doing okay? Like,
yeah, no, I'm grand. I'm
okay.
He's a Scotsman. They're tough.
Well, I know, but he shouldn't have to push through it if he has like a legitimate fever going on.
They're the toughest of the toughest.
I'm fired up on my favorite subject, so.
Oh, well, then yeah.
So, and then, we'll get into the Christianization in the little Q&A as well. We'll save that because I know you wanted to touch on that a little bit. We'll finish up with archaeology and how many physical items we have. Is there a lot? Can we learn from them?
We have a fair amount. The thing with like Pictish history, people always say that it's always been this big mystery and we just don't know very much. And actually we know a lot more than we think we do. And there's a lot of material culture. The most of it is in some metalwork, a lot of brooches, things like this, and rings. So lots of really, really nice jewelry, really fine silver and gold work. When it comes to textiles, there are only two. There
are textiles at all.
Yeah, there's little fragments here and there, but we have a tiny, tiny patch of plaid called the Falkirk fragment, and then we have one garment which is a hood found in Orkney. The Orkney hood.
You have a whole garment.
Yeah, it's
that's freaking insane.
It's in the National Museum of Scotland. It's this beautiful hood that was made for a child that has all these really, really long fringed tassels on it. I have a fantastic replica. You'll see me swanning about in it all the time. But
oh my God, I'm stoked for you guys.
There is depictions on the stone carvings of men wearing hoods, and there's a mention in an Irish tale of men wearing hoods. So certainly it seems like men, women, children were all wearing these sort of hoods. So yeah, in terms of textiles, that's pretty cool. When it comes to leather, unfortunately for me, there's not so much. There's a couple of shoes, a couple of sheaths, and that's about it. No real findings of belts and anything like that. Nothing particularly interesting. So yeah, it tends to be, even when it comes to weaponry, there's not much. There's one sword, the Gorton sword, that could potentially be Pictish, but it could also not. Odd spearhead, spear butt. The spear butts are quite interesting. There's not loads, but there's more than you think. To get involved, look at the kind of knives they were using, some of the weaponry, some of the clothing. There's tidbits here and there that really help differentiate it as non-Nordic. That's usually the best way I can put it. I'm doing Pictish clothing interpretations for the public or for museums or at events I run. It's usually let's kind of challenge ourselves on what we perceive like early medieval people to look like. Doing historical consultancy for TV, that's a big thing, saying, we're going to make it look authentic, and it will sometimes look so wild to people that they will still think it's fantasy. And in terms of, the really bright colours and all the fringy tassels on the Pictish stuff we have, is quite fascinating. So there is a lot of material culture to look at, nowhere near as much as Nordic, but we've got a lot of beautiful things in the museums here that's worth looking at if you're a super Celtic nerd like me.
That's awesome. So nice. Is it possible to at least, well, maybe not even typologically, but is it possible to like somewhat then date these? Like, do they span from like all the way to the early pre-Roman Iron Age up until the 9th century, or?
Yeah, there's a fair mix. It typically falls between sort of those kind of Iron Age dates. A lot of stuff are found in crannogs, which for people, if you don't know, a crannog is an Iron Age roundhouse built in the centre of the loch with a big walkway out to it.
Oh, nice! I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah, these were used from at least the Bronze Age right up until the Jacobite era in Scotland. Picts were reusing them a lot. So a lot of finds we have are from crannogs because when they deteriorate, they maintain a lot of the archaeology under there. So we've got a lot of like Iron Age dates on that stuff, and then the sweet spot for me, I always say, is 6th to 9th century, because that's when the majority of the finds fall within that kind of bell curve.
Nice.
So like that's my little hot spot, because it's got the most beautiful things, I think.
Yeah, fair.
Perfect. All right, let's wrap up the main show, and then we'll do a little Q&A, and then we'll let you get to bed with some whiskey, I guess.
For sure.
Is that racist? No, it's not, is it? just assuming a Scotsman's going to drink whiskey.
I'm a rum man, actually. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, F you, Dan.
Maybe it was then.
It's all right. I don't eat porridge either. It's fine.
Yeah, you have porridge for tea and a bit of haggis. All right, Hamish, where can people find you, and if they want to get tattooed by you and get some lovely Pictish artwork?
For sure. So my website's pictavialeather.co.uk. Same with Instagram and Facebook. Everything goes by Pictavia Leather. And I tend to share my tattoo stuff there as well. So I tattoo at Sacred Knot Studio in North Wales. I also work with Folkvanger in Edinburgh and Materia Magica in Glasgow. So I'm around and do a lot of conventions and markets here, there, and everywhere. So if you're interested, just get in touch, or you'll see me on various TV shows that I work on as well.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. I think last time you were on, we said we should do an episode just on leatherwork and the intricacies of leather. And then we just did another one on the Picts.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk for loads about the leather as well, but there's so few specifically Pictish stuff that we end up just going into Scandinavian and Irish stuff and Anglo-Saxon. But there's certainly enough there to really get stuck into.
Well, let's do like a general leather episode next time then.
I'm your leather man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
We can pair it with a certain type of Viking smut after as well.
We'll see if we'll find some leather heavy.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I'd love that. You're always good fun to talk to. So let's talk and book something in to talk about leather. Mags, where can people find you?
I am Archeomags on Instagram, Archeo with a K.
Perfect. And for me, it's Daniel_Farrand1, Horns Voting for the Business, and then Nordic Mythology podcast across the board. Go check it out on YouTube, where you can see all the little things that we pull up. You can see our little faces. There's always another element to it. Hit the like, subscribe, and the little bell as well. And there you go.
Cool.